Chapter 9, 2 Weeks. When Charlie tells Mrs. Davis about how Sadie seems to have known that Coyote was afraid of her walking stick, Mrs. Davis laughs. Don't give her too much credit, Charlie. Much as we love her, she's not the brightest bulb in the pack. She's always finding sticks to play with. Your walking stick was just another toy. Except that she didn't play with it, Charlie thinks. She just took it away. What Mrs. Davis says makes sense, of course, but still, it feels as if Sadie knew what she was doing, spirit to spirit. It's possible. Just possible. The day Charlie stopped using her stick, Sarita made a special dinner with peach cobbler to celebrate, and her father actually came home in time to eat it. It's the dogs, she told them when her father said how pleased he was at her progress. They didn't want me using the stick anymore. Good for them, her father said. Charlie figures he doesn't believe her, but it doesn't matter. He is so glad to see her making progress, he's willing to accept anything she says. Walking without the stick, Charlie discovers that there are plenty of saplings or branches or roots to grab if she needs help over a rough bit of the trail. And without the stick, the walk with Coyote becomes very different. Sometimes he stays with Sadie, running ahead, doubling back, though he's careful never to come close to Charlie, passing her only by going through the trees off the side of the trail. It no longer seems to matter whether she is ahead of him or behind him. Sometimes he disappears for long stretches, and she thinks they've lost him. Once in a while he vanishes almost as soon as they start the walk, and she doesn't see him again the whole way around the lake. That's when Charlie worries. As many acres of woods as there are around Eagle Lake, beyond them are housing developments, streets, cars, and the county roads where the cars go very, very fast. The images of trees, squirrels, creek that she gets when she closes her eyes don't help. She could just be imagining what she wants to believe, but always Coyote appears again by the time she and Sadie get as far as the chain across Eagle Lake Drive. It feels almost magical sometimes the way he turns up, as if she and Sadie are wearing tracking collars that let him find them. Little by little he is changing. Most of the time he is his dog self now, hardly ever the wild thing. She has discovered that he can smile. It isn't just that his mouth turns up naturally. His smile, like a wagging tail, shows her how he is feeling. Even his color is changing. Some of the red in his coat turns out to have been Carolina red clay. Swimming back to Sadie's every day, his fur has gotten lighter and lighter. His tail, the ruff around his neck, and what she calls his skirts, which are the long hair on the backs of his legs, are a pale beige now, a real contrast to the honey gold of the rest of his coat. The toes of his front feet turn out to be white. Charlie longs to pull the mats and tangles out of his tail and his skirts to brush him and make his coat shine. She thinks he is the most beautiful dog he has ever seen. His dark chocolate eyes are lined with black all the way around, a line that slants up in the corners like the eye makeup on an Egyptian princess. Elegant, Sarita has called him. It is deep into the sticky North Carolina summer now. The air is so thick Charlie feels sometimes as if she's breathing underwater. She walks a little bit earlier every day, changing the routine gradually in order to avoid the worst of the heat. She is still soaked with sweat by the time she gets to the Davises' house, but the walk itself is better the earlier she does it. Now that she is sure Coyote won't run off if she doesn't bring his food home to him the minute she gets home, she changes her clothes before feeding him, getting rid of the hiking boots and socks, the sweat-drenched jeans and t-shirt, putting on shorts, a tank top, and sandals. She still goes inside while he eats, and he still checks for danger every few bites. But she puts the bowl closer and closer to the house every day. One afternoon, when Sarita brings in the mail, there's a letter from Amy. Charlie takes it and thinks for a moment how impressed Amy would be at the changes in Coyote before she remembers that Amy doesn't even know about him. Incredible, she thinks, and drops the letter in the trash. She has better things to do with her time than read about how Amy is doing with her tennis. At least she has better things to do until Sadie and Coyote swim back across the lake. After that, the days have been stretching out blankly hour after hour. She usually spends a while on the computer answering instant messages from kids who check in to see how she's doing. Sometimes one of them asks if she wants to go to the mall or movies. And Sarita said she'll take her, but Charlie doesn't feel like being in a car if she doesn't have to. Besides, she has discovered that she doesn't really want to leave Eagle Lake, and the dogs, no matter where they are. This time, when she sits down to her laptop, Charlie is thinking about the difference between working with an animal you can touch, or leash, or cage somehow, and a wild thing you can't control. Somebody must know how to do it. Jane Goodall. She remembers the movie they saw in science class last year about Goodall and her chimpanzees. Charlie Googles Jane Goodall. An hour later, she has come up with a plan. What she needs to do is spend some time in Coyote's territory. She enlists Sarita's help, then calls Mrs. Davis to explain. Her father is working late that night, so after dinner, Sarita drives Charlie around the lake and drops her off in front of Crazy Sherman's. Well, you can come get me when it starts to get dark. Oh, I'll be back before then, Sarita says. There is a plastic bag full of freshly cooked liver chunks in Charlie's waist pack. Mrs. Davis has agreed to keep Sadie inside the house every evening until dark. There's no way for this plan to work without Sadie around. Charlie whistles a couple of times to let Coyote know she's there and walks back down toward the Davises' house. Coyote is in his usual place, lying on the smooth packed dirt by the tree across the road. "Liver!" Charlie calls to him. He sits up, poised to bolt into the woods, so she stops. She takes a piece of liver out and holds it up, hoping he can smell it. "You're gonna love this." She sets it down on the side of the road and walks away from it, back toward Sherman's. A few feet farther, she puts down another piece. She keeps this up, putting a piece of liver every 3 feet or so until she reaches the boulder at the end of the Haywards' driveway, one house down from the Davises. Then she sits on the boulder facing away from Coyote and gets out the mirror to watch what he does. She can't see his patch of bare ground from where she is, but she can see if he comes out to get the liver. For a long time, nothing happens. She is just wondering whether she has to go even further away when Coyote creeps out of the woods and across the road to the first piece of liver. He sniffs at it, then snatches it and gulps it down. He stands looking at the next piece, his nose quivering, and then he goes just far enough to get it, walking the way he used to walk, all hunched and careful. After another moment, he moves forward again and takes the next piece, and the next. Then he stops. He knows the others are there. He can see them and smell them, and he wants them, but he won't come close enough to get her to get. He won't come close enough to her to get them. Not even with her back turned. Finally, he heads back across the road. He doesn't go all the way to this tree, though. He flops down under a bush and puts his nose on his paws and watches her. Mr. Hayward comes out to fill his bird feeder. The minute he opens the screen door, Coyote is gone into the woods. Charlie explains to the man what she is doing, why she is sitting on his boulder. "That dog's wild," he says. "If animal control can't catch him, nobody can." "Well, I don't want to catch him," Charlie says. "I want to tame him." "Well, I don't know what your father's thinking of, letting you mess with that dog. That isn't some pet that got abandoned, you know. I know dogs. The way it's acting, it's never been anything but wild. You don't get a dog used to humans by the time it's 3 months old, it'll be wild forever. Wild and dangerous. That's a known fact. Can't any more tame a full-grown feral dog than you can tame a 5-point buck. If it's up to me, I'd get my gun and I'd put him down." "You wouldn't!" Mr. Hayward shrugs. "Well, come winter, it'll be the only sensible thing." Winter is a long way away, Charlie thinks, but her stomach is in a knot. Mr. Hayward goes back into his house. "Known fact," his words echo in her mind. "Well, I don't know it. The books don't say anything about it. Wild forever. Pfft, no." There were people in Coyote's life. What about whoever trapped him with food? Charlie swats a mosquito and closes her eyes, remembering the scene she saw before, the men catching Coyote and locking him in the shed. Her breath begins to come hard and fast the way Coyote's did, trapped in a dark shed. She sees him, feels him pacing back and forth, around and around, looking for a way out. He scratches at the door, at the walls, till his paws bleed. Then there is a sound by the door. Coyote smells a person coming closer and cowers back into a corner. The door opens a crack and a child's face peers in. Coyote throws himself against the door, knocks the child down, and runs. He goes on running into the woods. Is this what happened? Was Coyote born in the woods? The people who owned his mother could have found him there, too late to tame him. Maybe that's who the men were who used food to catch him. And then he escaped. It could be true, just like before. It feels true. She swats another mosquito and checks her mirror. Coyote has not come back. Charlie hopes he knows to stay far away from Mr. Hayward. She is just about to put the mirror back in her waistpack when he is suddenly there again at the edge of the road. He lies down, relaxed, but watchful. Wild forever, she refuses to believe it. You might as well get used to me, she thinks at Coyote. I'm not going to give up. Come winter, she imagines a cleaned, brushed, golden dog curled up on the rug by the fireplace as snow falls past the bare trees outside the lake room windows. Can that happen? Of course it can. Of course. By the time Sarita comes to get her, Charlie is bored out of her mind. How did Jane Goodall keep from going nuts all those days in the jungle? She has 8 new mosquito bites to add to the last of the poison ivy. She wonders if Sarita's hot water trick will work on mosquito bites. Good thing she isn't in Africa. Jane Goodall got malaria trying to get the chimpanzees used to her.